This ball is war. With the big board unveiling the top 300 for the NFL draft. The TDLive top 300 is here, folks, and we are live on Raw, Uncut, Big Board in the War Room. So we're going to take a look, folks, at the 2021 NFL Draft Big Board. If I was a GM for the NFL team that wants to hire a brilliant man and owner of TD Sports Live, take a look at the Big Board and let me know what you think. Normally, I wouldn't let this out prior to the draft. We're about 24 hours, less than that now, from the draft, and this is how we have our rankings set. Now, if you see an asterisk by a player's name, it's because I'm a big fan of said player, of marked player. The ranking, of course, is top to bottom, the best player at the top, lowest player in rank at the bottom, and in parentheses on the right side of their name is their overall ranking on the big board of the draft. Now, I would factor in a player such as Najee Harris as the 8th player. I still wouldn't take him in the first round unless it's 24 or later. But if they take a player that I have that's much worse than Najee, I could, live with taking Najee sooner. We're going to show on the for Lawrence, Justin Fields, and the only other quarterback we have a first-round grade on is Mac Jones. Sam Mellinger has a second-round grade from us, as does Zach Wilson. We have Trey Lance in the third round. Kyle Trask has a fourth round player. Davis Mills, fourth round. Kellen Mond, fourth round. Ian Book, more of a sixth-round pick. And the other players potentially 6th, 7th, or undrafted. Now, at the running back position, we also have a video out on them. On top of the top 10 that we've listed, I'd like to add Brian Robinson Jr. out of Alabama, who's the backup to Najee Harris. And on top of that, we have Larry Browntree. Did not test well whatsoever at his pro day, but if you watched him play for the University of Missouri, the heart and soul of that offense, you can give that ball to Larry in the fourth quarter on his 40th carry, and he's going to run it just as hard as he ran his first carry. This is a guy that you want, looks like a pro, all things considered. Chris Evans out of Michigan, big-time recruit, productive as a sophomore. Haven't seen him in a couple of years as far as reaching what we thought his potential was. Perhaps that's on Harbaugh. Tested very well. We've seen him rise up boards. Elijah Mitchell, tough back. The guy that stands out to me is Jamian Hawkins. He was electric at Louisville. Can make big-time runs, big-time plays. Demetric Felton out of UCLA. He's flip-flop from receiver and running back. Had the touchdown at the Senior Bowl from Ellinger on the opening drive. Khalil Herbert struggled at Kansas. Excellent once he went to Virginia Tech. Jake Funk, a big-time favorite of mine. Jake stands out. Jake has had big-time ACL issues, which is why he's on the board where he is. But based on how he looked last year, you're looking at a very translatable NFL running back. Rex Burkhead with a bit more speed, I'd say, on a Jake Punk. And the rest of the guys are just guys. Stephen Carr out of USC has some capability as a 3-down back. But those are your 7th round or undrafted players. Now, the best fullback in this class can also line up at tight end, and that's going to be Tommy Tremble. Tommy out of Notre Dame is the most physical, down blocking tight end or fullback in the class. Ben Mason, of course, a close second. But Tremble, to me, looks like a 4th, 5th round player, and Mason 6th, 7th to undrafted free agent. Devontae Smith takes our number 1 receiving spot on the board, and this is a player that we absolutely love. We compare him to Marvin Harrison. Jamar Chase is excellent as well. After his pro day, it did have me questioning who would I take if push came to shove, and I still think I'd go with Devontae. This is a Heisman Trophy winner. Fantastic route runner, excellent after the catch, just generates separation, understands the receiving game. Not saying Jamar doesn't, but Jamar at 6 feet 210 played much bigger than he actually is at the collegiate level. I'm not saying he can't play like that at the next level because he looked like Jerry Rice at his pro day, but Devontae Smith definitely playing in 2020 upped his stock, at least for me personally. Our third wide receiver is Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. He opted out Agent Zero after a couple games this year, but he is just absolutely phenomenal. Tremendous athlete, tremendous size, tremendous productivity. Comes from an excellent school that's been producing players like Tyler Johnson at the position, as well as players on the opposite side he was practicing against, such as Antoine Winfield Jr. Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State is our 4th best wide receiver. We have him ranked 23rd on the board. Tylan has overcome an ACL injury, but was a consistent producer in his collegiate career. Kadarius Toney flashes and had a phenomenal year this past year with Kyle Trask. Some of the stuff he does on tape reminds you of Tyreek Hill and has some inconsistencies that make you wonder whether it's more of a flash in the pan on the collegiate level or if he can be an elite professional. Terrace Marshall had actually beaten out Justin Jefferson prior to his injury, and then Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, along with Joe Burrow, absolutely dominated and won a national championship together. But Terrace has been fantastic. Reminds me very much so of DJ Chark from the same school. So we'll see how he turns out. Now, Rondelle Moore, a 5'7" player, had over 1,500 yards as a freshman. He's 5'7", of course, coming out now after his junior year. Has had injury issues since his freshman year. Extremely productive player. I had him on mock 1.0 as a nice new toy for Aaron Rodgers in the 1st round. If you happen to get him in the 2nd round, considering the depth at the wide receiver position, that's an absolute steal. I do like Rondelle Moore quite a bit. If healthy, that's a phenomenal pickup for any team that decides to go his direction. Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 5-star recruit coming out, brother of Equinemius St. Brown and the Packers, and he dominated at the collegiate level. 7 touchdowns in 6 games as a junior, and over 1,000 yards in his freshman and sophomore year. Beyond him, Elijah Moore, who, all things considered, absolutely dominated this year in college. 5'9", 185. So you have to worry a little bit about the size. If I'm hearing that concern on other prospects, then we're going to bring it up on him. And I did skip De'Ami Brown, who averaged 20 per catch and had over 1,000 yards as a sophomore and junior. Downfield threat, big time player. You question the route tree. That's why I have a 2nd round grade on him. But definitely worth taking a look at him. He's got some of the most spectacular tape that you can imagine. One-on-one, he's unstoppable. So he can get lost a little bit with physical corners, but his speed and ability to make plays on the ball down the field are spectacular. Jalen Waddle, beyond Elijah Moore. I know a lot of people have Jalen going top 10, and if you take him, that's fantastic. Reminds me a lot of a smaller Sammy Watkins. Jalen is a little bit like, as Tommy of TD Sports Live here has referred to Jalen Reagor as a Jalen Waddle type player out of TCU for the Eagles, who still has a lot of upside. Didn't play quite as well as you'd expect for a first round pick. Did have injury issues. Jalen Waddle is going to flash, and when he makes a play, it's going to be a big play. So you're always going to think, oh, if we can hit that, boom, and why can't we do that all the time? Well, we've seen with Sammy Watkins, you want a player that is capable, play in, play out, of being unstoppable. And Jalen Waddle, more of a slot player a lot of the time in college in Sark's offense. Not saying you can't play outside. Played with a big depth of talent there. Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, so John Michie, lots of talent there. But Jalen is definitely a good player. He just didn't set himself apart from players we've seen taken from Alabama in the past that I thought were better than him in college that haven't lived up to their first round grades as of yet. Seth Williams out of Auburn, Nico Collins out of Michigan are very similar players, both very athletic, very big, excellent size. Productivity fluctuated, but I do like both those players. Josh Palmer out of Tennessee, a lot of people are very high on him, but as far as receivers go, it's a very talented field. So if you're taking a player like Nico in the 4th, 5th round, you're thinking, man, if I can get Jalen Darden or Amari Rogers late, I really don't want to reach on a player in the 1st round. Now, as you see, I do have 1st round grades on 4 receivers there, and those are the 4 players I'd be willing to take in the 1st round. Beyond that, I do think there's an excellent wealth of talent at this position. So do not rush, and a lot of players that I'm a bit higher on, such as Amon-Ra St. Brown, teams are not quite as high on, but there's 32 different GMs and 32 different coaches and schemes that are thinking of ways to win the football game. So I'm sure a lot of these teams have different guys at different places. So it's not necessarily a reach where you take them. It's that you have to take your guy. As far as some of the depth down here, of course, Sage Sherrata's brother is a middle linebacker, Chaz Surratt, in this draft class. Tamorian Terry had the first couple years looked fantastic. Big drop off the talent, so he's a kid to keep an eye on. Great size. Trevon Grimes, another guy, 6'5". TJ Basher, 6'6". Fitzpatrick, we saw at the Senior Bowl, consistently getting open, just couldn't catch the ball. Simi Fehoko, excellent speed, deep ball guy. Dax Milne played with Zach Wilson. We've seen him recently really climb public media draft boards, although I think more accurately the 217 mark is where he'd go. Now, Cornell Powell out of Clemson, 24 years old by the time of the draft, or by the time of the regular season, as the draft is tomorrow night. The thing with Cornell is if you see him without a shirt on, he looks like an A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. That could get a team to overdraft him. And he is a capable athlete. I think he'll be a phenomenal special teamer, but he shouldn't get drafted over any of the players that I have above him. Marquez Stevenson out of Houston, Tyler Vaughns out of USC, Amari Rogers out of Clemson, our boy Tutu Atwell, who surprisingly only weighed in at 155 pounds and only ran a 4.4. We were expecting a 4.1, 4.2. So that's no good. And Jalen Darden, North Texas, and Cade Johnson, who had great rapport with Sam Ellinger at the Senior Bowl, and they did well in practice together. So the tight end position, quick rundown. Kyle Pitts, definitely worth the top 5 pick or top 10 pick. We have Pitts as the 5th best player in the draft. Patty Fryermuth really stands out when you watch his tape. Didn't play as much this past year due to an injury. He could really surprise some people. We have him as the 33rd best player on the board. Brevin Jordan, very similar to Janu Smith, 48th best player on the board. Hunter Long out of BC, 70th best player on the board. Then you got Tony Pauljohn, Quentin Morris, 6'4", 248. Tommy Tremble, the aforementioned at fullback. Trey McKitty. Kenny Yeboah had a great Senior Bowl. Miller Forrestal under Nick Saban. Pro Wells. Dylan Soner out of the Iowa State current tight end factory with Matt Campbell. Luke Farrell and the 25-year-old Matt Bushman out of BYU. Not the best tight end class, although I do like the top 3 going within the first 2 rounds. At the tackle position, excellent class. Penei Sewell, the 2nd overall player on the board. Christian Darrisaw, 14th. Cosme out of Texas, 30th. Dylan Radins, 34th, protecting Trey Lance. Rashawn Slater, who we project more as a guard. We also have him, as a tackle, but 6'2", 6'3", not the quintessential top 15 pick to be a tackle, although he can do it. Elijah Vera-Tucker, a lot of people are very high on him. We have him more as a guard, but the 29th best player on the board, Alex Leatherwood out of Bama. Walker Little, very interesting case. 5-star recruit coming out, played very sparingly throughout his college career, always graded extremely well. And he's a guy to watch as a late first-round candidate because he just has so much upside. Brady Christensen out of BYU, we know that he played limited competition but was the highest grade left tackle in the nation. Jackson Carman, Jalen Mayfield, Tevin Jenkins, who people have ranked as high as the first round, really struggled, in my opinion, with Joseph Osai. The plays that he didn't struggle are all highlights, so you get told that this guy's fantastic, but inconsistent against speed rushers, does not get his hands on guys enough, can be over-aggressive. James Hudson out of Cincinnati, Liam Eichenberg, all players that I really, really like. So an excellent tackle class, and as the draft goes on, we will definitely dig in. I'm going to scroll down so you can see the class here as we have them graded out. Lee, Jackson, Munford. So quite the class there. You're going to feel pretty good with some depth tackles a little bit later in the draft. At the guard position, you have Rashawn Slater. You have Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State. The aforementioned Elijah Vera-Tucker, who has the capability of bouncing outside. Quinn Miners, the big Canuck, really stood out at the Senior Bowl. Trey Smith, former 5-star recruit, has had some medical issues with Tennessee. Ben Cleveland, do not meet this guy in a back alley. If you see him with his shirt off, he is a monster, phenomenal athlete. You got Aaron Banks, that Notre Dame offensive line, the Pittsburgh offensive line, a lot of teams up in the Big East, formerly Boston College, they've been pumping out a lot of talent on these offensive lines, including Tommy Kramer. One of my favorite players in this draft is Kendrick Green. I really think Kendrick Green is going to be fantastic, although the guy he reminds me of that didn't quite pan out, although he did have a couple very good years in Kansas City, former guard out of Illinois, Jeff Allen. So hopefully Kendrick gets drafted a bit higher than where I have him graded, 123, because he's a guy that I could easily see potentially be far surpassing his value in being a Pro Bowler. Now, a guy I'm extremely high on, great center class, is Landon Dickerson. Now, yeah, he's had a couple ACLs, but for a guy like him, I don't think that's going to be a major issue. If you can get all-pro type play for 8 to 10 years, I think that's worthy of a first-round pick. And if you watch Dickerson's tape, originally out of Florida State, went to Alabama, won a national championship, his physical blocking reminds you a lot of Logan Mankins. I know he's playing center compared to guard. He just beats people up. He wants to punch you in the mouth, wants to be physical, he wants to eat you up. Now, Creed Humphrey out of Oklahoma, 4-year starter, fantastic player. Quinn Miners, the guard, can of course bounce over to center. And then we have 4th and 5th round grades on Hill through Monet, so even through Jackson. So you got a relatively deep class at the center position. A lot of times you only have 3 or 4 guys that are really draftable. This year you have a pretty good selection to take those centers. Now, the defensive end position, you have Kwity Paye, originally from Connecticut. He really was fantastic at Michigan, and he would stop plays in the backfield, runs for loss, tackles for loss. I have him ranked as the 11th best player in the draft. 265 pounds, running a 4.5, 4.6 at his pro day, putting up big-time bench reps. Footy Pay is going to be a force at the next level. Jalen Phillips, originally a 5-star recruiter, went to UCLA, retired from football due to concussion issues. Red flag, red flag. But you start to say, hey, can we put that red flag away? Because he overcame that. He might have been frustrated at UCLA. Transferred to Miami and was sensational. Sensational. Arguably the most productive defensive end in the entire nation, even more productive than Koipe, even more productive than the number 15 he replaced at Miami, fellow draftee, as we have him marked at the number 52 overall value player on the draft. Gregory Rousseau, first time, I believe, in draft history that you'll have two players either go in the first round or the first 2 rounds that both were the same number defensively from the same college in the same NFL draft. So both were 15 at Miami. Of course, Rousseau opted out this year due to coronavirus, and Phillips had just transferred in. Jonathan Cooper is a guy I have much higher than many others in the draft. He just looks like a Patriots type player to me. Never stops moving, never stops working, doesn't result in statistics. It's just he's always on his assignment. He's always doing the right thing. I am extremely high on Jonathan Cooper out of Ohio State. Stood out in the collegiate football playoffs, stood out at the Senior Bowl. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and that's what Jonathan Cooper does. Now, Milton Williams, Dontarie Pope 2.0. This guy at the Combine, fantastic, or his pro day. And his production over the last half of his last season was absolutely sheer dominance. So he can play inside, he can play outside. If he had produced at that level and he's coming out as a junior, the entire season, a surefire top 15 pick, especially the way he tested. So the way he looks compared to a Jason Owe who ran a 4.3, didn't have a sack this past season in college, you got to be looking at a Milton Williams and licking your chops if you're getting him after another team takes Jason Owe. After that, we have Gregory Rousseau, aforementioned from Miami, 6'7", great athlete. Jason Owe, another great athlete. Carlos Boogie Basham will be 24 by the time the season starts, but he is a very capable big end, poor man's Cam Hayward. Patrick Johnson, extremely impressive athlete to watch play. Patrick Jones, the same thing. They get off the line. Patrick Jones has big-time pass rushing ability. I think he's going to be really slight in the run game, but his ability to get off that line, that quick burst, and he needs to improve his strength, but he's got good technique, and he knows how to make plays. Now, Jaquan Bailey out of Iowa State, stats don't stand out. Contributing to winning football, discipline, holding your assignments, absolutely did. That's why he was first team All Big 12. A couple other guys, Osa Adigizua, of course, was a undefeated wrestler in high school. Wyatt Hubert, one of my personal favorites out of Kansas State, had over 8 sacks the past 2 years and just has a motor that's incredible. He has short arms, but his heart, his motor, he finds a way to make it happen. And we'll get through the rest of the defensive ends as the draft goes on. Christian Barmore, surefire first-round pick, should go top 10 in my opinion. Aleem McNeil, freak athlete, North Carolina State. Marvin Wilson would be right behind Milton Williams, as I have highlighted here, who we have listed at the DN position. But Marvin Wilson would have been a potential late first-round pick had he come out a year ago. Did not look as good at a Florida State program that really struggled this past year. Tyler Sheldon sat out, 350 pounds out of LSU, won a national title the year prior. Definitely has some weight concerns, has struggled to work, so opting out made sense. A guy that if you get the most out of him can really play football, but has some Albert Haynesworth to him where he might just shut it down. Taquan Graham, captain of Texas, leader of Texas, fantastic producer. Texas has had defensive linemen such as Malcolm Roach, Poona Ford going undrafted and then starting their first game of their rookie season. Don't be surprised if Taquan Graham goes undrafted or goes late round or goes pretty early. If the team's smart, they're going to take him where I have him, and that's ranked about 76 in the draft. This kid can play on the outside, he can play on the inside. Pass rush isn't going to be fantastic, but consistent penetration is. Jalen Twyman to Darryl Slayton really stand out, and Bobby Brown is sensational. Didn't think he'd come out this early, thought he should have stayed another year, but Bobby is a big-time D tackle. So as you can see, through pick 100, that's pretty much through the third round. We have Levi Amuzurike from Washington, below Jay Duffley from USC, and Davion Nixon, who some have projected as a top 60 player. Some even have him in the first round. So a very deep class here. A couple other guys that stand out. Lorenzo Neil Jr., his dad, Lorenzo Neil, Hall of Fame fullback. Blocked for players such as LaDainian Tomlinson, Eddie George. So a very good class on the D tackle position. People are saying it's not quite as good as many other years, and it might not be elite, but I think they're being slept on a bit. So I think you're going to see a lot of good contributors out of that group. Micah Parsons and Jeremiah Awusu Coramoa are tied for the 6th best player because it's a pick your poison. It depends on your scheme with this guy. So if you want to bump everybody down, yeah, there's 6 and 7. But 1A, 1B, depending on what your scheme is. Now, Awusu Coromo has a lot of Isaiah Simmons to him. He's lined up a lot in the slot at Notre Dame. But it's a running and a short passing game. So he's stuffing the run that way. If they're playing his zone, or he can even switch to man and have the safety pick up the guy in the slot, and he's taking the running back where he's blitzing. So the versatility there is insane. Whereas Micah Parsons could play inside linebacker and be like a Devin Bush. He can play outside linebacker and be a crazy rush edge. So 2 different style football players, but it's pick your poison. What is your scheme going to be? If you have crazy rushers, you're a San Francisco 49ers, you probably want Awusu Coromoa, who's going to be extremely effective in coverage. If you're a team like the Bucs, you have a Levante David, you want to add a guy like Devin White, then the Devin White clone is a Micah Parsons, who can come in and ran a 4.3, 30 bench reps, dominant player, 5-star recruit, committed to Ohio State, wore an Ohio State shirt, showed up on campus when he wasn't supposed to be there, so he was barred from going there, ended up going to Penn State, sat out this past year, one of the best linebackers I've ever graded coming out of college. Awusu Coromo is different in the fact that his dominant grade comes from his coverage ability. Not that he can't make other plays, because at 215, he smashes people similarly, same weight as Darius Leonard of the Colts, but he's going to be dropping into coverage, being sent on blitz, not going to be quite as explosive as Micah Parsons. Zaven Collins I have ranked as a 15th best player, should be a first-round pick in my opinion. Would love the Buccaneers to get him at 32 if he falls. Nicholas Bolton out of Missouri, big-time hitter. Baron Browning tested extremely well, had a great collegiate football playoff out of Ohio State. Jamin Davis has been flying up draft boards, insane testing, ran a 4.38. Chaz Surratt mentioned his brother at wide receiver, former quarterback in North Carolina, switched to middle linebacker, 2 years there, it's going to be 24 at draft time, has looked extremely good, just needs to work on his tackling. Monty Rice out of Georgia, we have a late second, 3rd round grade on him. Errol Thompson, one of my favorite players in the draft. Juwan Bentley clone. KJ Britt, one of Tommy of TD Sports Live's favorite players out of Auburn. Dylan Moses, extremely inconsistent, has had some injury woes, but of course when you're starting on a team like Alabama, you're definitely worth a look. Justin Hilliard, Pete Warner, Patty Fisher, all coming out of the same conference. These are going to be late round players. Mike Rose stands out at 221, had 6 interceptions for Iowa State this past year, really stood out. At the cornerback position, Patrick Surtain, his father was a Pro Bowler multiple times, one of the best players in Miami Dolphin history. We have him ranked as the 9th best player. J.C. Horn, son of Joe Horn, 17th best player, very physical corner, press man. Asante Samuel Jr., son of Asante Samuel. So you get the theme here, dealing with the children here. Asante Samuel Jr., excellent tackler, can be used in the nickel position or outside, thrives in zone schemes. Eric Stokes, crazy athlete, ran a 4.3 at his pro day. Had an insane junior season, and I thought he was the better player out of Tyson Campbell. We have a 53, who's just behind Caleb Farley, who I had a first-round grade on up until he had back surgery, and then it turns out he has coronavirus, and just not a good time for him after he opted out as well this past season. Too many red flags for me to say, hey, I'm going to be the guy to reach on him when we all know he's struggling right now. You know, that's a guy you hope the second round comes around and you swipe him up. And as far as a player, I do have the aforementioned 4 players above him, regardless of injury woes at this point, because Samuel has continued to impress me. I didn't expect Horn to perform the way he did at his pro day. Surtain has always been my clear-cut number 1. And when Stokes ran a 4.3 at 6'2", I said, wow, he played in the SEC. Look at his production this final year. The sky's the limit for him. A lot of people have a first-round grade on Greg Newsome out of Northwestern. Excellent zone scheme. Would be a great fit with the Packers, opposite side of Jair Alexander. I would prefer to get him as well as Elijah Molden in the second round. Molden would be a great fit for a team like the Chiefs, a similar type player to Tyrann Mathieu in the sense that he can play outside, but you prefer him in the slot or at the safety position, just getting his hands all over the ball. Trill Williams out of Syracuse, I'm high on. I think he'd be a great fit for the 49ers. Trey Brown out of Oklahoma, excellent player. I think he'd be a great fit with the Patriots. Rodarius Williams, brother of Greedy Williams, for the Cleveland Browns. 4-year starter at Oklahoma State. Aaron Robinson, a lot of people had Robinson as well as the guy I have listed below, Sean Wade, as first-round picks prior to the season. Some people still have them going in the second round. As you can see, I have them more as fourth-round picks. Miller really stood out to me out of Washington at the Senior Bowl. Thought he made a lot of good plays. Thomas Graham Jr., a guy that's been highly sought after seemingly by the scouts that have been sent his way by the New England Patriots. And a guy I'm lower on, Paulson Adebo, has made a lot of plays at the collegiate level, so you could see him go much higher than how he's listed here. Benjamin St. Juste out of Canada, not a ton of college or not a ton of football experience, but he really caught my eye at the Senior Bowl. So what I saw at the Senior Bowl, based on what I saw previously on tape coming out of Minnesota, that's produced a lot of great players lately. Bit inconsistent in college, but much more consistent towards the end, upward trending into Senior Bowl. This is a player to keep an eye on. Marco Wilson, extremely athletic kid. He's the one that in Florida's game where they had the big time penalty, cost them the game. Discipline issues like that, that's going to cost you big time. Kelvin Joseph, transfer from LSU, really struggled against Kyle Pitts. Everybody does, but that's why I have him there. Tay Gowan, I've seen him listed as high as a second-round pick. Of course, I wouldn't take him till the 5th or the 6th. We move to the safety position. Before we wrap this thing up, I have Trevon Moehrig and Javon Holland as potential first-round picks. The only safety grades that I have with first-round picks. Andre Cisco is a turnover-producing machine. If you want a ball hawk, then Andre Cisco is your guy. Just don't be surprised if Patrick Mahomes pump fakes him, sucks him in, and you're giving up 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and Cisco is looking like burnt toast. Jamar Johnson, big-time hitter out of Indiana, has been climbing up draft boards. Ardarius Washington out of TCU, 5'8". If you want a player comparison on him, I'd say Bob Sanders. Caden Stearns, I originally had a first-round grade on Caden, was a freshman All-American, really struggled as a sophomore and junior with injury issues, with compete level, and left school early. His teammate, Chris Brown, is right below him there. And Chris really just plays fundamental football. He might go undrafted. And I have hope. You know, I just have to grade these players based on what I know, and that's the value I'd have on him. I look at a guy like Chris Brown, I think he can be a starter. Marcus Murphy, Ashari Croswell, Derek Forrest round out the rest of the group. Richie Grant out of UCF, he looks like a home run. He's going to be 24 by the time the season rolls around, but he is fantastic. I'm a bit higher on Jamian Sherwood than a lot of people out of Auburn, followed up by Talanoa Hufanga out of USC. Sean Davis and Sherwood are similar in a way. Davis is only 5'11", 215, but similar to Uphoff, who's listed underneath him, they levy the hammer. They bring the wood. Hamza Nasruddin out of Florida State, 6'4", good versatility, more of an athlete than a football player. So I have concerns about him. James Wiggins, Allhart out of Cincinnati. DeMar Hamlin, Allhart. Divine Diablo, very good athlete. Jacoby Stevens, good size. And Richard LeCount could be a steal coming out of Georgia. The guy that I was very disappointed in, Paris Ford, definitely dropped down my board quite a bit when I saw how he tested at his pro day. So that's going to wrap it up. This is my top 300. Feel free to comment. Let me know how you feel about this. But if I was to submit my scouting report for the upcoming draft to an NFL team, this is what I would give them. This is the draft value chart. Of course, I would be there, and we would compartmentalize need, value, and position. So, as I said, I have Najee Harris ranked 8th best player on the board. It doesn't mean I would draft him 8th. That's as far as the best player I feel is on the board. So if I know that I can get Najee at 32, I'm not going to take him at 8. So the way it's listed has to be explained by the creator. You know, you could make it more sense. Oh, Najee Harris 25th. But as far as value to a football team, I would say Najee's 8th. And if you took him 8th, you know, I wouldn't say it's a great pick. I wouldn't say it's a bad pick because I think he's a hell of a football player. But if you can get a guy, you know, if you can go get a lobster for $4 instead of $8, you're going to get it for $4. It doesn't mean that lobster isn't worth $8. It just means you got it for $4. And that's what you're looking to do when it comes down to the NFL draft, when it comes down to any transaction that you're making in NFL football. You want to find an edge. This is 32 teams going into the grocery store to bargain shop. And who is going to be the most frugal, who's going to be the most intelligent, who's going to be the wisest spender so they can make the greatest meal, but also have future assets to continuously make that great meal, to not go all in on a single purchase, you know. So you have to be wise, you have to spend wisely. Najee Harris, I think, you know, say the Jets take him at pick 18, fantastic pick. I'm not a first round running back guy. I'm not going to argue with a pick like that. So thank you very much for watching. This is the Top 300. I'm Dan with TV Sports Live, and can't wait for the draft tomorrow. Have a great night. Thank you.